She never saw it coming. Neither did I, at first. But when the truth finally crawled out of the shadows, I realized the woman I'd given everything to had been betraying me all along. The love I thought was unbreakable. It was just a lie, one she told with such ease that it left me questioning everything. Now, the man she married is gone. In his place stands a stranger, a man with nothing to lose, and a name that will never be hers to speak again. Some wounds never heal, but vengeance. That's a different kind of medicine. And this time, it's my turn to make her pay. I was born Jack Thompson, the youngest of 3 kids in a modest home just outside of Rawlins, Wyoming. My father worked as a ranch hand for the Reynolds family, one of the wealthiest landowners in the area. My mother, a quiet woman who spent her days managing a small household, taught me that loyalty, hard work, and honor were virtues that defined a man. They didn't have much, but we never went without the essentials. We grew up in a world of dusty roads, wide open skies, and a community that never let you forget who you were. You were either a part of it, or you were nothing. But my family, especially my mother, never let me forget one thing: family first. My older brother, Ben, always had the drive to be more than what our small town offered. He joined the military and moved away, leaving me and my older sister, Lucy, to pick up the pieces. Lucy was always the sensible one, the voice of reason in a world that often demanded more than we could give. But me? I wasn't like them. I'd always been restless, driven by an ambition I couldn't quite understand. Maybe it was the constant reminder that the world outside of our little town was bigger and better, bigger opportunities, better lives. I wanted that. And somehow, even if it meant bending the rules, I thought I deserved it. That's how I met Sarah Reynolds. Sarah was the daughter of the wealthiest ranching family in the county, and from the first moment I saw her, I felt something inside of me stir. She wasn't like the other girls from town, with their simple lives and small ambitions. Sarah had a sharp mind, an intensity in her eyes that seemed to promise more than what her family name could ever give her. But she was also a paradox, graceful and warm on the surface, but with a quiet, almost imperceptible distance. She held her cards close to her chest, something that always intrigued me. Our relationship was simple at first, shared glances, quiet conversations during family gatherings. I'd tell myself I was just another farm boy, a face she'd forget in time, but there was always that spark between us. When she finally smiled at me, when I caught the hint of curiosity in her eyes, I felt like the world had shifted on its axis. I knew then that I wanted to be the man she would choose. That desire pushed me, sometimes in ways I wasn't proud of. We started dating in our early 20s. She was everything I'd ever wanted, beautiful, ambitious, and determined to make a name for herself beyond her father's wealth. I'd always admired her strength, but it was the quiet moments, the ones when she didn't think anyone was watching, that made me fall in love with her. We were a team, or so I thought. But there was always a piece of Sarah I couldn't quite reach, a part of her she kept hidden even from me. It wasn't long before that piece of her started to gnaw at me. Maybe it was my ambition again, that desire for something more, or maybe it was just the slowly growing suspicion that she wasn't as open with me as I thought. But it wasn't until after we got married that I realized how deep the distance ran between us. In the first few years of our marriage, things were good. But the cracks started to show in subtle ways. Small lies, promises broken with the flick of a wrist. I found myself working harder, pushing myself to climb the corporate ladder, while Sarah seemed more distant, more wrapped up in her own world. The more I gave, the more she pulled away. It wasn't until I discovered the truth that I realized how much I had been deceived. The affair wasn't a single night. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It had been going on for months, maybe even longer. I found out by accident, an old message on her phone, one I'd never been meant to see. But once it was in my hands, once I saw the truth laid bare in the form of words and pictures, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. The betrayal wasn't just in the affair itself, but in the realization that she'd kept it from me for so long. She hadn't just lied, she'd built a world I wasn't a part of, a world I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares. It's funny, really. You think you know someone inside and out. You think love is enough. But the truth is, love doesn't protect you from the darkness inside the people you trust the most. And now, there was no turning back. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be undone. I wasn't just angry. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was broken. The man who had promised to love her, protect her, and stand by her side had to disappear because I wasn't sure I could live with the man she'd turned me into. Now, I'm a different person. A stranger to myself, a stranger to her. And I'm done. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I had always believed in the sanctity of the bond we shared. That belief had been our foundation, the thing that kept us going through rough patches, the thing that made me ignore the small cracks I had started to notice in her demeanor. But the moment I saw the message on her phone, I knew everything was about to change. The moment it clicked that everything I thought I knew about her was built on lies, that's when my world stopped spinning. It wasn't even something that should have raised alarms at first. Just a simple, harmless notification on her phone screen as it lay on the kitchen counter, the way she had carelessly left it there in plain sight. The name on the screen was Tommy, and the message was innocuous enough, some laughable nonsense about a dinner she'd made. But as I leaned in closer, as I read the words a second time, something inside me shifted, the unease I had been feeling for months suddenly bloomed into clarity. Can't wait to see you tonight. The hotel room's booked. I'll wear the red dress for you like you asked. That was the message. And it wasn't from a friend. It wasn't from a colleague. It was from a man I didn't know. But even before I picked up her phone and started scrolling through the thread, my gut told me everything I needed to know. It was the way the words felt, the way the familiar text thread made my chest constrict. It was an intimacy I wasn't supposed to witness, an intimacy I wasn't supposed to even suspect existed between Sarah and someone else. I remember how my hand felt, numb, like it wasn't even my own. The phone slipped from my grasp for a second before I caught it again, as though some part of me still wasn't ready to face what was in front of me. I could feel the blood drain from my face, my throat tightening as if I were being suffocated by the very air I breathed. I didn't even know if I could breathe anymore. My body betrayed me, shaking uncontrollably, as I scrolled further. Message after message, each one revealing more of the affair, each one deepening the wound in my chest. There were references to hotels. There were plans to meet again, hidden from me behind the veil of late nights at work or girls' weekends. The thing that struck me the hardest, maybe because it cut so deep, was how effortless her words were with him. How comfortable she sounded. There was no hint of the woman I had married, the woman I had believed loved me. Only a stranger. A woman who could lie to me and to herself with such ease. But what hit hardest wasn't just the affair. It was the realization that this had been going on for months, that I'd been completely blind to it. There had been warning signs, sure, but I had chosen to ignore them. Small things, Sarah staying late for work, the distant look in her eyes when I came home late from my shifts, the absence of those quiet moments we used to share. But every time I felt the pull of suspicion, I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks, that I was being paranoid. How could I ever suspect her? How could I ever believe that the woman I loved so completely could do this to me? I stood in the kitchen, feeling like a fool. My heart was a pit in my stomach, gnawing away at me. All I could hear was the ringing in my ears, the deafening silence that followed the revelation. The walls of our home. The home we had built together, felt suddenly cold and alien. It was as if someone had taken the life I thought we had and ripped it apart in one cruel, sharp motion. But the worst part? The worst part was realizing that I wasn't just the victim of this betrayal. No, I was the last to know. I wasn't even worth the honesty of the truth. Sarah hadn't come to me, hadn't admitted anything. Instead, she'd kept me in the dark, pretending we were fine while she had shared her body, her time, her love with another man. I could feel the rage slowly building in my chest, not like a fire that burns with heat, but more like an icy cold storm, settling deep into my bones. It was a quiet kind of fury at first, the kind that doesn't show on the surface but churns beneath, eating away at your soul, demanding a reckoning. And it wasn't just anger, it was betrayal of a magnitude I had never imagined. There were years of shared moments that now felt hollow, meaningless. There were promises we had made to each other that now lay shattered at my feet. I tried to talk myself down. I tried to breathe, to tell myself that I needed to process this carefully. But I knew, deep down, that there was no turning back. There was no way to unsee what I had seen, no way to erase the feelings that had been unleashed inside of me. All the love, the trust, the hope I had poured into her, it had been a lie, and I had been the fool for not seeing it sooner. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I wasn't ready. What would I have said to her? How could I face the woman who had betrayed me so completely, so effortlessly? I spent that night in a haze of disbelief, pacing in the dark, my mind spinning in endless circles. The one thing that kept playing over and over in my head was her voice, the voice I had once trusted, the voice I thought would never lie to me. I had heard her speak to me so many times, promising me everything. But now, I realized it had all been empty words. And that realization, that was the most painful betrayal of all. The next morning, she came home late, just like every other day. She didn't even know. She had no idea that her world, the world I had once shared with her, was crumbling to dust around her. She was still caught in the lie, still wrapped up in whatever fantasy she had built, while I was left here, shattered, with nothing but the cold, ugly truth. I was no longer Jack Thompson. The man she married, the man who loved her with every piece of himself, was dead. And the man standing in front of her now was a stranger. A stranger who was about to change everything. The next few days after I found out about the affair felt like I was suspended in some kind of purgatory. I couldn't act immediately, I couldn't let my anger consume me, not yet. But I could feel the darkness in me growing, the part of me that had been buried for years, the part that had always been driven, always been ambitious. Only now, my ambition has shifted. Now it wasn't about success or status. It was about making her feel the same agony I had felt, the same cold emptiness that had hollowed out every part of my soul. I spent the first couple of days in silence, watching Sarah, letting her believe that everything was fine. I needed to watch her, to let her go about her daily routine as though nothing had changed, because I knew, deep down, that nothing had changed for her. She was still wrapped up in her own world, still oblivious to the storm that was coming. That was part of the strategy. If she had known what was coming, if she had suspected that I knew about her lies, she would have been more careful. But I couldn't let her see the truth in my eyes just yet. I couldn't let her see the shift in me. I had to let the plan unfold on its own. I started with the basics, information. I needed to know everything. Who was Tommy? Where did he come from? How long has this been going on? What had Sarah been lying to me about, and how deeply had she buried her deceit? I wasn't just looking for answers to soothe my own pain. No, I needed leverage. I needed to find every crack in her perfect little lie, every weakness in the world she had built. I started going through her things, subtly, at first. I didn't want to raise suspicion, so I had to be methodical, calculating. It wasn't the first time I had gone through her things. In fact, we had shared everything before. She had always trusted me with her phone, her emails, her life. But this time, I wasn't just a husband. I was a man who had been betrayed, and I was hunting for every piece of evidence I could find. I started with her email. It wasn't hard to get into, her password had been something simple, something I could have easily guessed. And there it was. The deeper I dug into the past months, the more I uncovered. Meeting schedules, hotel bookings, flight confirmations. The thing that hurt the most was seeing the ease with which she had moved through her life, the way she had compartmentalized her affair from everything else. And Tommy, he wasn't just a random fling. He was someone she had known for years, someone embedded in the social circles we had moved in. That's when I realized how much deeper the betrayal went. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was a carefully constructed deception. She had made a choice. She had chosen him, and she had hidden it from me with the kind of meticulous detail I had once admired in her. It wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the calculated destruction of trust, the thing I had always valued above all else. That's when I started planning. I knew Sarah's weakness, her pride. She'd always prided herself on the life we built together. She wanted everyone to believe we were the perfect couple, the perfect little family in the eyes of the world. But everything I'd learned had given me a weapon, a way to expose the lies she had built around herself. The affair wasn't just an emotional betrayal, it was a betrayal of everything she had ever claimed to be. But I couldn't expose everything at once. I had to do this carefully, methodically. If I confronted her directly, she would shut down. She would deny it. She would lie to my face and spin a narrative that would make her the victim. I wasn't about to let her walk away scot-free. No, I had to break her down piece by piece, just as she had done to me. I had to make her see exactly what she had lost, what she had willingly destroyed. First, I started with Tommy. I reached out to him, discreetly, through anonymous emails at first. I wanted to know what kind of man he was, what leverage I could use. It didn't take long for him to reveal himself. Tommy wasn't just some businessman or random guy she had picked up at a bar. He was well-connected, influential in ways that could be exploited. He was part of the same circles I had once been proud to be a part of, the same circles that Sarah had always flaunted in front of me. But Tommy wasn't the one who had lied to me. He wasn't the one who had made promises. I needed him to see that. I needed him to feel the weight of his role in this betrayal, and I knew exactly how to do it. The thing about people like Tommy is they're afraid of exposure. They hide behind their wealth, their power, their carefully constructed reputations. I knew exactly how to pull the rug out from under him, how to expose his secrets in a way that would make him desperate. And when he was desperate, he would be vulnerable. But I wasn't going to stop there. The true crux of my plan, the one thing that would make Sarah truly feel the weight of her actions, was what I had planned for her career. She had built her entire life on the foundation of her reputation, her professional success. What if I could expose her hypocrisy to everyone she worked with? What if I could make her the villain in her own story? She had always been the golden girl, the one everyone admired, the one everyone wanted to be around. But beneath that perfect exterior was someone who had been willing to destroy everything for a secret. And I was going to make sure the world saw it. The moral complexities of what I was doing hit me late at night, when I couldn't sleep, when the weight of the darkness in me started to suffocate me. Was this really who I had become? Was revenge truly worth all this? I had told myself it was about justice, about making sure she understood what she had done to me. But in those quiet moments, I questioned myself. Was it just my ego? Was I really seeking justice, or was I simply using her betrayal as an excuse to destroy everything she had built, everything she had worked for? I knew the answer, of course. It wasn't about justice. It was about pain. About making her feel every ounce of what I had felt when I realized the woman I loved had lied to me so easily. And when I finally faced that truth, I realized there was no going back. I wasn't just planning revenge. I was planning my escape from the man I used to be. I was going to burn it all down, her world, her reputation, her everything, because I needed to feel something other than the hollow emptiness inside me. And the moment I saw her face when she realized what I had done, that would be my final act of triumph. The morning I decided to execute my plan, everything felt different. The air was colder than usual, the sunlight dimmer, as if the world itself had adjusted to the storm I was about to unleash. I had become someone else in the days since I discovered her betrayal. I had grown sharper, colder, more calculated. Gone was the man who had loved Sarah blindly. The man who believed in the sanctity of our marriage. In his place stood a stranger, a shadow, a man who had learned to wield pain as a weapon. I woke up early that morning, long before Sarah. She had stayed up late the night before, which gave me the time I needed to make the first move. I pulled on a dark jacket and jeans, nothing flashy, nothing to draw attention. The day was too important for mistakes, too important for anything that could make me stand out. There would be no hesitation now. I had made my decision, the plan would play out, step by step. First, I made the call to Tommy. I had already planted the seeds in his mind, the subtle email suggesting that someone, knew about his affair with Sarah. I had made sure to leave just enough ambiguity so that he wouldn't be able to trace it back to me. He had bitten, nervously agreeing to meet at a bar just outside of town. I wasn't concerned about his reaction. It wasn't him I was after. It was Sarah. He was just a pawn in this game, a small piece I needed to maneuver to get closer to my goal. At the bar, he sat there waiting for me, clearly anxious. His eyes darted nervously between the door and his phone, hoping no one would see us. When I sat down opposite him, he offered a forced smile, his handshake cold and stiff. He didn't know it yet, but his world was about to come crashing down. "I know what's been going on," I said, my voice calm, almost friendly. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head. I had to sound confident, like I had control of the situation. Because, at that moment, I did. His eyes widened, his mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" he stammered, trying to maintain composure. "You and Sarah. You think I don't know about the hotel rooms, the late-night meetings?" "I've seen everything," I continued, leaning back in my chair, watching his face pale. "But what you don't know is that I'm not here to expose you. Not yet, anyway. You're going to help me with something, Tommy. And if you don't? Well, let's just say the things I know about you will be shared with the right people." His jaw clenched, the fear in his eyes unmistakable. "What do you want?" I smiled, the satisfaction of having the upper hand warming me in a way nothing else had in weeks. "I want you to leave her. Walk away. Disappear. Sarah can't have both of us. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been doing behind closed doors. Your wife, your friends, the people who think you're such a great guy, everyone will know how you've been sneaking around behind their backs." He was silent for a moment, calculating his options. I could see the wheels turning in his head, the moral compass of a man who'd been playing the same game I had. Eventually, his shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. "You can't do this," he muttered, but the words lacked conviction. He knew it was over. He had no choice but to follow my demands. "I'll make sure Sarah believes you," I said coldly, my eyes narrowing. "And you're going to leave her without a single trace. No phone calls, no messages. Just disappear. You've been nothing but a coward, hiding in the shadows. But that ends today." He agreed, stumbling through his words, a man broken. I wasn't satisfied, but it was a necessary first step in the chain I had set into motion. The next phase was far more delicate, Sarah. When I got home, she was already in the kitchen, fixing her coffee as though everything was normal. It almost made me sick to look at her. She had no idea the storm I had set in motion, no idea that her world was on the verge of crumbling. I watched her for a moment, trying to force myself to feel something for her, some remnant of the love I used to carry for her. But there was nothing left. There was only the cold satisfaction of knowing that my plan was unfolding perfectly. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone neutral, almost too casual. She smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Morning. How was your night?" I didn't answer immediately. I simply stood there, watching her, my mind working as I formulated the next step. It was almost too easy. She was so comfortable, so unaware of the storm building just outside her door. "It was fine," I said finally, walking over to the counter, my eyes catching the small details. The coffee cups we used every morning, the picture frame of the two of us on our wedding day, everything was as it had always been. Only now, I could barely look at it. "I've been thinking about a few things," I added, my words cold, controlled. She didn't sense anything. "Like what?" she asked, pouring herself another cup of coffee, looking up at me. "I think we should talk about your work," I said, my voice steady, but beneath it, there was an unmistakable tension, a thread of malice that I could feel tightening. "I've been hearing things about you." Her smile faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. "What do you mean?" I leaned in, speaking in a low, deliberate tone. "You know, rumors. About your promotion, about the way you've been handling things at the office." Her gaze flickered. She had always prided herself on her career. It was her identity, and the idea of it slipping through her fingers sent a wave of panic through her. She didn't know it yet, but I was going to expose her. I was going to destroy her reputation the way she had destroyed me. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, the edge in her voice betraying her anxiety. I could hear the guilt in her words, feel the tension in the room. She was already unraveling. "I know everything, Sarah," I said quietly. "Everything about your affair with Tommy. And now, I'm going to make sure everyone else knows, too. Your little world of perfect lies is over." She froze, her eyes widening as the weight of the truth hit her. You can't." But she didn't finish. Her words were cut off by the deafening silence in the room. I had said everything I needed to say. The words were out, and now I was watching her unravel before me. It wasn't enough to simply expose her affair. No. I wanted her to feel the full force of the betrayal I had experienced, and that meant tearing down her life, her career, her image, her relationships, all of it. I walked toward the door, leaving her there, stunned, broken. I knew she wouldn't chase me. Not yet. She would have to process it first, to understand what had just happened. But I had already won. The feeling wasn't one of triumph, it was a hollow victory. Because, in the end, all I had succeeded in doing was destroying her, just as she had destroyed me. The consequences of my actions would ripple through everything. I knew that. But that was the price of revenge. In the end, there was nothing left but the cold satisfaction of knowing that I had made her feel every ounce of pain she had caused me. And now, all I had to do was wait. The days that followed were a blur. At first, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was as though the weight of the years of deceit, of living in the shadows of Sarah's lies, had been lifted from my shoulders. I had gotten what I wanted, she was exposed, her world torn apart in the most public, humiliating way. Her career, once so carefully crafted and protected, was now in shambles. Tommy had disappeared, and the ripple effects of his absence were already being felt. Her co-workers had begun whispering, her reputation slipping further with every passing hour. For the first time in months, I felt in control. But that control, at least, the kind I thought I had, was an illusion. As the days dragged on, a cold, gnawing emptiness started to creep in. It wasn't immediate. No, the first few days were too chaotic, too full of the rush of satisfaction to allow any room for doubt. I had spent so long dreaming of this moment, fantasizing about her downfall. But now that it had come to fruition, the reality of it felt hollow. At night, I found myself staring at the ceiling in a silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. The house felt emptier than ever. I had once filled these rooms with laughter, with plans, with hope. Now, the space between me and Sarah was vast, impossibly vast. And it wasn't just because of the betrayal. It was because something inside me had shifted, irrevocably. The man who had loved her, the man who had trusted her with everything, was gone. And in his place was something unrecognizable. A stranger who could destroy the woman he had once sworn to protect, a man who had lost his own sense of self in the process. I couldn't stop thinking about her reaction when she'd finally understood what I had done to her. The shock in her eyes, the disbelief, the way her world had shattered in an instant, had it felt the same to her as it had felt to me when I discovered the affair? Or was it something else? Was it deeper? Was it the realization that the person she trusted most had ripped apart everything she had fought so hard for? I couldn't say. But what I did know was that as much as I'd wanted to see her broken, I hadn't expected the darkness that would follow my actions. The thing about revenge, about truly seeking to destroy someone, is that it's not just about them. It's about you, too. You can't burn someone else's life to the ground without leaving traces of that fire on yourself. And in the wake of what I had done, I couldn't help but feel lost. I had thought that if I exposed her, if I took away everything she held dear, I would be whole again. But I wasn't. I was more fragmented than ever. It was like I had set a fire to her world, but the smoke had burned me just as badly. It wasn't her absence that tore at me. It was the absence of who I was without her. Without the love that had once defined me. I found myself questioning everything. Was it worth it? Was this destruction really what I needed to heal? Or had I simply become what I hated most, the kind of person who reveled in the pain of others, who fed off the ashes of their downfall? I had justified it to myself. I had told myself that I deserved this, that she deserved to feel what I felt. But now, in the quiet moments, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had become just as broken, just as empty as she was. I avoided seeing her for the first few days. I couldn't bear it. What was there to say? The woman I had once loved so fiercely was now nothing more than a shell of the person I had known. And I had no idea who I was anymore. It was easier to stay away, to keep the distance between us that had been growing ever since I uncovered her betrayal. But one evening, she reached out, by text, of course. She knew better than to come to me directly. I don't even know who you are anymore. I stared at the words for what felt like hours. She was right. The thing is, I didn't know who I was either. All I had was a man broken by betrayal, who sought justice through destruction, but now had no sense of self left. No one was a winner in this situation. Not really. I didn't reply. I didn't know what I could say. What was left to say? The emptiness lingered. I started questioning if the revenge had truly been worth it. It had given me a sense of power, yes, but at what cost? I had wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to understand the depth of the destruction she had caused. But now, all I felt was the ghost of the man I used to be, standing beside the ashes of the life I had once built. There were moments when I thought about walking away, just leaving, completely vanishing. I could change my name, my life. I could leave behind all of this pain. Maybe I'd find peace that way. Maybe I could start fresh, free of the wreckage that now defined me. But as much as I tried, I couldn't escape the truth. The man who had sought revenge was the same man who had loved her. The two sides of me were intertwined. And as much as I tried to bury that love beneath the bitterness and anger, it would always be there. In the end, revenge didn't fix anything. It didn't heal me. It didn't restore the trust one had once felt, nor did it bring the satisfaction I had expected. All it left me with was the quiet realization that nothing, could undo the past. No amount of retribution could fill the void she had created in me. And no amount of pain inflicted on her would return what we had lost. The only thing I had left was the lesson: revenge, when executed with such malice, has a way of eating at your soul. It doesn't grant you peace. It doesn't make you whole. It only pulls you deeper into the abyss. And in that emptiness, you realize that maybe, just maybe, it was never really about the other person at all. It was always about you, and the things you're willing to lose to feel something again. The days drag on, and I find myself standing at the crossroads of who I was and who I've become. The house is empty now, in more ways than one. Sarah is gone, of course, her career dismantled, her reputation in tatters, her life unrecognizable, but so am I. The man who sought revenge, who planned and executed it with cold precision, no longer feels like someone I know. I look in the mirror some mornings and struggle to see the face of the man I used to be. The love I once felt for Sarah has turned to ash, and what remains feels like a shadow, something hollow and devoid of meaning. Revenge, I learned, is a strange beast. It promises satisfaction, justice, but it only delivers emptiness. In the moment when I saw her crumble, when I felt the weight of her regret and humiliation, I thought I had won. But the victory was hollow. The pain didn't go away, it simply changed form. What was once the sting of betrayal transformed into the gnawing ache of my own emptiness, the realization that by destroying her, I had destroyed parts of myself too. Betrayal is a cruel thing. It destroys more than just relationships, it chips away at everything you thought you knew about trust, about love. But revenge is even crueler, because it doesn't just seek to hurt, it seeks to consume. I had wanted her to feel the same gut-wrenching pain I did, to experience the loss I had endured. But in the end, it wasn't her suffering that mattered. It was mine. As I sit here, alone in the quiet of my thoughts, I realize that there is no redemption in vengeance. There's no sense of closure, no neat little ending to tie everything together. The truth is, the past is irreparable, and we are all just left to live with the wreckage we create. What remains, if anything, is a question: do we learn from the destruction, or do we simply keep repeating the cycle? And in that uncertainty, I find the only real truth left: we are all just trying to survive the wreckage of our own making.